The first modern superhero, the Man of Tomorrow, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, perpetually passed over for a man dressed as a bat. Conviction of character taking a back seat to the rule of cool. The template for adolescent power fantasies, an irrelevant and unrelatable relic until now. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Superman, the animated series. Thank you to 80stees.com for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code TOYGALAXY to get 30% off your order today. 80stees.com started off as the source for t-shirts inspired by all things pop culture from the 1980s, but there's more to the 80s than just the 80s. They've got shirts inspired by the 70s, the decade that paved the way for the 80s. They've got shirts inspired by the 90s, the decade that carried on the legacy of the 80s. They've got shirts inspired by the 2000s, because the 80s isn't just a decade, it's a state of mind. Whether your interests are laser focused on one thing, say movies, there's plenty of choices from Jaws to Shaun of the Dead. If your interests bounce around, they've got shirts from cartoons to video games, superheroes to music and wrestling. From Transformers to Dungeons & Dragons, Gollum to Ron Burgundy, Darkwing Duck to Powerpuff Girls, from Pong to Street Fighter II. Their goal is to have something for everyone that loves retro pop culture. Whether your favorite cartoon is Jem and the Holograms or Robotech, or your favorite movie is The Karate Kid or 16 Candles, you'll find something you love. Click the link below and use code TOYGALAXY for 30% off your order today. Again, that's code TOYGALAXY for 30% off your order. Thanks again to 80stees.com. Superman the Animated Series is an animated series that ran 54 episodes over 4 seasons from September of 1996 to February of 2000, made for 90s kids who thought Superman was old and busted while Batman was the new hotness, despite the two characters being created 1 year apart in 1938 and 39 respectively. Clark Kent is an investigative journalist for the Daily Planet, locked in a friendly and professional rivalry with Lois Lane, one of the best reporters in the city. Both of them trying to get the next big story about the city's hero from another world, Superman. One story that Clark hopes Lois never learns about Superman is that he was born on Krypton, sent to Earth by his parents just before the planet exploded, raised by humans as a regular kid in Kansas, and now maintains a secret identity as Clark Kent, investigative journalist for the Daily Planet. Thanks to the power of Earth's yellow sun, he has incredible strength and speed, as well as heat vision, X-ray vision, cold breath, super hearing, and the ability to fly. And Clark will need all of it to protect Metropolis from local and intergalactic threats as Superman. Created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Superman's first appearance was in Action Comics #1, published by DC Comics in 1938. His popularity kicked off the superhero genre that dominated the medium of comic books in the United States for the next 9 decades. And counting. A year later in 1939, DC Comics doubled down on superheroes with Batman, created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane, the two heroes polar opposites of each other, locked in perpetual competition for the spotlight. Superman, the immigrant from an alien world with the powers of a god, Batman, the violent crime survivor turned billionaire vigilante detective, their popularity waxing and waning, relevant to society's desperation for self-determination versus their hope for spiritual salvation. Superman's career in media followed quickly after his popularity in comics. In 1940, just 2 years after his first appearance, he was featured in radio serials. His stories adapted quickly to the advancements in technology. By 1941, he was lighting up theaters in the revolutionary Fleischer Studios animations, The Man of Tomorrow showing the way toward a brighter future during a time of World War. Through the 1950s, he flew into homes in a live-action series on television. In the 60s, he took on Broadway, and in the 70s, he appeared weekly in Saturday morning cartoons and a blockbuster feature film that set a new Superman standard for the 80s and beyond. In 1986, DC Comics recognized that Superman needed some simplification and modernization after 48 years of stories that ranged from absurd children's fare to insightful socio-political commentary. What are his powers? Where is he from? How many different colors of kryptonite are there, and what are the effects? Does he have a pet? And if so, is it canine? Yes, Krypto survived. The soft reboot clarified his power set and his relationship dynamics throughout the DC universe. It updated his look, his ability to grow hair, his rogues gallery, but it did get rid of his monkey. By 1987, the movie going public, the production, and the stars of the films were all tired of Superman's shtick. In 1988, DC celebrated his 50th anniversary, and in 1989, everyone fell in love with Batman. Batman marked a milestone for superheroes in movie and on TV. It was the dark age of comics that started in 1986 with Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns ascending into the mainstream. Darker, grimmier, grittier, more realistic, everything that Superman was not. It was a renouncement of the camp and color of Batman's depiction from the 1960s TV series through Super Friends, a tonal shift that would continue in Batman the Animated Series, which premiered on Fox in 1992, just after Batman Returns hit theaters. Batman the Animated Series was created by Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski and produced by Warner Brothers Animation, frequently airing during primetime hours. It continued to propel Batman to an unprecedented level of popularity and pop culture recognition. The series itself was praised and rewarded for its more mature, more dramatic, more complex approach to Batman, to his supporting cast, his villains, the storytelling, the visual style, the humor, the respect for the intelligence of the average viewer. When the first season of 65 episodes of Batman the Animated Series ended in September of 1993, Batman was on top of the world and Superman was dead. Killed by DC Comics in December of 1992 in one of the biggest comic book events in history, he watched from super heaven while a man dressed as a bat stole all of his press. Superman returned to life in October of 1993, just after the end of the first season of Batman the Animated Series, complete with a new live-action television series on ABC called Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. On top of that, Warner Brothers started talking about a new movie based on Superman's death in the comics. A Superman movie that would do for Superman what Batman did for Batman.
Alex, you're living in a dream world.
In 1995, Batman the Animated Series wrapped its second season after a total of 85 episodes and a feature film. Fox's rights had expired and Warner Brothers was amped to have him back under their full control. Meanwhile, two key players behind Batman the Animated Series left to pursue other projects. Series creators Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski took a call with Steven Spielberg, who was enamored with their work on Batman and wanted to develop a new project with them. Timm and Radomski pitched a futuristic Star Wars type show about a smuggler/space pirate and a teenage Johnny Quest type show, as well as a superhero show. And that's the one Spielberg picked. That superhero show was Freakazoid, and it wasn't what Timm wanted to make. He was hoping for a Steve Ditko Spider-Man, real-life-infused hard times of a teenager approach, but Spielberg doubled down on the Animaniacs formula of zany comedy. Happy for his team to have the work, Timm quietly let himself out early in the production and hoped for other opportunities. As he closed that door, another reopened. Warner Brothers was looking for a showrunner for their new Superman series. While it might have seemed like a no-brainer to pivot to Superman after the success of Batman, a Superman series wasn't a given. It happened because Warner Brothers wanted to develop a Superman cartoon ahead of their film release, and they wanted more episodes of Batman to air on their new network, the WB. Who better to bring in as showrunner for both a new Superman and a continuation of Batman than Bruce Timm? Timm was happy to be back in familiar territory, reinventing an iconic superhero for the 90s, to figure out what worked and what didn't work, to get the Batman team back together for Superman. And more Batman.
He was the sole survivor of a once great planet called Krypton. Sent to Earth and raised by loving parents. As a teen, the search for his true identity led him to discover miraculous powers. Now, disguised as mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, in reality, he is Superman, using his incredible powers to fight evil. Superman!
Superman premieres Sunday at noon on Channel 26, The U.
But where to start with Superman? Batman was inherently cool. He was dressed like a bat. He had all kinds of cool stuff like a bat car, bat jet, bat mansion, bat butler, bat bombs, bat cave, batarangs. Superman was kind of a square, a two-dimensional fake nerd with enough strength to punch the moon across the galaxy, but he rarely used his power that way. An inspirational hero, but unattainable in reality, and journalist isn't nearly as sexy as billionaire playboy.
Nice job, team.
Timm and his team tried to approach Superman the same way they approached Batman, by developing a style that was inspired by the old Fleischer Superman cartoons. But would the Fleischer Superman aesthetic work for Superman? Timm decided not to go in that direction for two reasons. One, the dark, gritty, noir sensibilities worked better for Batman, and two, how could his team possibly do it better than Fleischer had already done? When you compared the two, it would be obvious that they were just a modern imitation. Timm's Superman was going to be closer to the Superman of the 1986 soft reboot than the classic Superman of the Golden Age. There were going to be limits to his powers to humanize him just a bit. He might have to struggle to perform some of the heroic feats, really strain to fly faster, to breathe colder, to punch harder. His Clark was going to be more self-confident, smart, and clever, a guy who actually works hard and cared about his job. He wanted to dispense with the Christopher Reeve interpretation of Clark as a clumsy oaf who lets Lois help him up when he trips in order to maintain the illusion of his secret identity. Timm thought about going even more retro than Batman by adapting the original Siegel and Schuster style from the comics, but found inspiration instead from an unexpected source. An obscure comic and cartoon from the 60s called Mighty Hercules was brought to his attention, and the character design finally clicked. The rest of the production design followed the idea of Batman, but with the brightness turned up from Metropolis, as Timm frequently describes it, quote, bright, futuristic, optimistic ocean liner art deco. Batman had a lot more iconic villains going into the creation of Batman the Animated Series. Superman had Lex Luthor, Brainiac, Bizarro, Metallo, drawing a blank here. Doomsday, obviously, Batman, no, not Batman, Parasite, Solomon Grundy, Mr. Mixie's Pitlick, robots? For Superman the Animated Series, they developed a Lex Luthor that was a billionaire tech bro. To this day, the most relatable, realistic type of villain in America, one that needs no explanation to the average person. Brainiac gets an update as the Siri of Krypton that kept itself alive to fight another day, while all the stupid, squishy Kryptonians killed themselves with ignorance. And to really give Superman something to test his mental and physical powers, Darkseid, the immensely evil new god created by Jack Kirby. Superman and Clark Kent were played by Tim Daly, Lois Lane was played by Dana Delaney, Lex Luthor was played by Clancy Brown, who originally auditioned for Superman and reluctantly accepted the role as the villain. Lex Luthor's assistant Mercy Graves, a character created for the show like Harley Quinn was created for Batman, was played by Lisa Edelstein, Corey Burton played Brainiac, Mike Farrell and Shelley Fabaret, married in real life, played Clark's parents, John and Martha Kent. Other notable cast members included Michael Ironside as Darkseid, Michael Dorn as Calabac, Ed Asner as Granny Goodness, Gilbert Gottfried as Mr. Mixie's Pitlick, and of course, Frank Welker as various creatures, characters, and Crypto the Superdog. Superman's theme music was composed by Shirley Walker, the same Shirley Walker who composed music for Batman the Animated Series. She also composed themes for the majority of the characters and 6 full episodes. Like Batman, nearly every episode had a complete original score, with the rest being covered by 4 other composers. Season 1's 13 episodes ended in February of 1997. Season 2 added an additional 28 through May of 1998. Season 3's 10 episodes aired through May of 1999. Despite a full Season 4 plan, Superman was canceled, airing only 3 episodes. The Season 4 and series finale aired in February of 2000. It was a 2-parter called Legacy. Written by Paul Dini and Rich Fogel, it sets up Superman as a brainwashed slave of Darkseid on the planet Apokolips. He's done a lot of awful things. Despite his friends' attempts to help, it's not until he leads the charge to invade Earth that things begin to turn back in his favor. That finale was intended to set up an entire season that would have seen Superman doing the work to earn back the trust of everyone on Earth, trying to reconcile the awful things he did in Darkseid's name and find peace. But Superman was canceled, partially because the Superman movie never happened, but also to clear the deck for Timm's new Batman project, Batman Beyond, about a teenage Batman in the future carrying on the legacy of Batman. And that dangling story thread wouldn't be addressed in Superman's next television appearance in 2001 as part of the Justice League. That series starts fresh, assuming you know the basics about Superman, but not necessarily how Superman ended. It would have to wait until Justice League Unlimited in 2004. Superman the Animated Series continued the Batman tradition with a comprehensive line of action figures, vehicles, and accessories from Kenner Toys, a subsidiary of Hasbro, till all are one. Most of the figures feature an action gimmick of some sort: light up, blast shield, kryptonite armor, underwater rocket blaster, instant reveal action, whirlwind escape, and even blast apart robots. DC Comics published a Superman the Animated Series comic, 68 issues from 1996 to 2002. It exists in this same universe and features writers from the show including Paul Dini and Evan Dorkin. A Nintendo 64 video game was finally released in 1999. Plagued by development issues and drama between Warner Bros. And licensee Titus, it is widely recognized as one of the worst N64 games, if not one of the worst video games overall, period. It was so bad that the PlayStation version was canceled. A sequel called Superman Shadow of Apocalypse was released in 2002 for PS2 and GameCube. Published under the Atari branding, it fared better, ranking as average.
Nice job, team.
In 2009, Warner Home Video released Superman the Complete Animated Series as a 7-disc box set with all 54 episodes. In 2021, they released it again on Blu-ray and on HBO Max. You can also stream it from various online streaming services. Superman the Animated Series did exactly what it set out to do: create a modern version of Superman that made sense in the days bridging the new millennium. It updated a 60-year-old character in a way that felt new and fresh and maintained the legacy of what came before. including the legacy of Batman the Animated Series as Batman returned to Warner Brothers and shared a programming block with Superman called The New Batman-Superman Adventures in 1997. As he had done in the 1930s, Superman was the model for everything that came after, including Batman Beyond and the additional Batman episodes commissioned by the WB after getting the rights back from Fox. It was the refinement of the character designs on Superman that carried forward into those successive series. Love it or hate it, Superman the Animated Series was a Superman for the 90s, but it was also a Superman for all ages, for all eras. It possessed the heart and spirit of the character that has allowed him to endure for so many generations, but with a new layer of style and confidence that propelled him into the future. Still not as cool as Batman, but always the man of tomorrow. How are we doing on time?
Fine.
Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, if you would like early access to the videos ad-free, as well as behind-the-scenes features, sneak peeks at upcoming projects, and exclusive monthly podcasts about the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy. And let us know in the comments down below if you were a fan of Superman before, during, or after the animated series. I definitely grew up with the Super Friends and Christopher Reeve versions of Superman, but I was just the right age for the animated series when it hit. Yeah. Superman's never going to appeal to the people the same way as Batman, but there are plenty of people out there who still think being thoughtful and compassionate and thoughtlessly serving your community are just as cool as having a bat-shaped rocket car. Cut.